Hello and welcome back. Today is Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, and we are reading Chapter 6 of Abhorsen by Garth Nix today. And I've already tried to read this chapter a little bit. I was on page 3 and then I had a coughing fit. And I had to get up and blow my nose. It felt like I swallowed something sharp. I don't know what happened, but I'm still kind of coming back from it. But I think I'm okay. Anyways, bear with me because my voice might go out here and there in this chapter. I'm hoping not. But this is a fairly short chapter. I guess it's not really short. It's 7 pages, but we've been reading like 14, 15, 16 page chapters here recently in this book. So I'll give you a little sneak peek. It's called The Silver Hemispheres, and it's starring poor Nick and Hedge. And I have a hard time portraying Hedge because I just see him as, I don't know if you're familiar with like the stolen valor people who pretend to be soldiers or cops or like want to be an authoritarian figure, but they really don't, they're like an office worker, they work at a gas station or something, and it's like it makes me think like, here's my badge, you respect me. That's what I think of Hedge. Like he's some fake guy who's pretending to be a ex-military person, and poor Nick is so hypnotized and deranged with sickness from being near all these death and free magic that he doesn't know what's going on. He can't tell that this guy's a phony, so it's always hard for me to try to like, I just do Hedge in like a regular strange voice. I don't know if you notice, it's like I don't really have a character for him. But that's how I see Hedge. He's gross to me. I feel bad for people like that who feel so unheard and frustrated that they have to be like pretend to be someone cruel and tough. But anyways, enough of Hedge. I can't stand him. Let's start reading chapter 6. My voice feels better. Let me take a drink real quick. Okay. Chapter 6. The Silver Hemispheres. 120 miles to the northwest of Abhorsen's house, the eastern shores of the Red Lake lay in darkness, even though a new day had dawned. For it was not the dark of night, but of storm, the sky heavy with black clouds that stretched for several leagues in all directions. The darkness had already lasted for more than a week. What little sunlight came through the cloud was weak and pale, and the days were lit by a strange twilight that did no favor to any living thing. Only at the epicenter of this immovable cluster of storm clouds was there any other light, and that was sudden, harsh, and white, from the constant assault of lightning. Nicholas Sayre had grown used to the twilight, as he had grown used to many other things, and he no longer thought it strange. But his body still rebelled, even when his mind did not. He coughed and held his handkerchief against his nose and mouth. Hedge's night crew were sterling workers, but they did smell awful, as if the flesh were rotting on their bones. Generally, he didn't like to get too close, in case whatever they had was contagious, but he'd had to this time, to check out what was happening. You see, Master, Hedge explained, we cannot move the 2 hemispheres any closer together. There is a force that keeps them apart, no matter what methods we employ, almost as if they're identical poles of a magnet. Nick nodded, absorbing this information. As he'd dreamt, there had been 2 silver hemispheres hidden deep underground, and his excavation had found them. But his sense of triumph at their discovery was soon dispelled by the logistical problems of getting them out. Each hemisphere was 7 feet in diameter, and the strange metal it was made of was much heavier than it should be, weighing even more than gold. The hemispheres had been buried some 20 feet apart, separated by a strange barrier made of 7 different materials, including bone. Now that they were being raised, It was clear that this barrier had helped negate the repulsive force, for the hemispheres simply could not be brought within 50 feet of each other. Using rollers, ropes, and over 200 of the night crew, one of the hemispheres had been dragged up the spiral ramp and over the lip of the pit. The other lay abandoned a good distance down the ramp. The last time they'd tried to drag and push up the lower hemisphere, the repulsive force had been so great it was hurled back down, crushing many of the workers beneath it. In addition to this strange repulsive force, Nick noted, there were other effects around the hemispheres. They seemed to generate an acrid, hot metal smell that cut through even the fetid, rotting odor of the night crew. The smell made him sick, though it did not seem to affect either Hedge or his peculiar laborers. Then there was the lightning. Nick flinched as yet another bolt struck down, momentarily blinding him. Deafening thunder came an instant later. The lightning was striking even more frequently than before, and now both hemispheres were exposed. Nick could see a pattern. Each hemisphere was struck 8 times in a row, but the 9th bolt would invariably miss, often striking one of the workers. Not that this seemed to affect them, part of Nick's mind observed. If they didn't catch a light or get completely dismembered, they kept on working. But this information didn't stay in his head, as Nick's thoughts always came back to his primary goal with an intense focus that banished all extraneous thoughts. "We will have to move the first hemisphere on," he said, fighting the shortness of breath that came with the nausea he suffered whenever he went too close to the silver metal. "And we will need an additional barge. 2 hemispheres won't fit on the one we've got, not with the 50-foot separation. I hope the import license I have will allow 2 shipments. In any case, we have no choice. There must be no delay." "As you say, master," replied Hedge, but he kept staring at Nick as if he expected something else. "I meant to ask if you'd found a crew," Nick said at last, when the silence became uncomfortable. "For the barges." "Yes," replied Hedge. "They gather at the lakeside. Men like me, master. Those who served in the army of Ancelstier, down in the trenches of the perimeter. At least till the night drew them from their pickets and listening posts, and made them cross the wall." "You mean deserters? Are they trustworthy?" Nick asked sharply. The last thing he wanted was to lose a hemisphere through human stupidity, or to introduce some additional complication for when they crossed back into Ancelstier that simply could not be allowed to happen. "Not deserters, sir. Oh, no," replied Hedge smilingly. "Simply missing in action, and too far from home. They are quite trustworthy. I've made certain of that." "And the second barge?" Nick asked. Hedge suddenly looked up, nostrils flaring to sniff the air, and he didn't answer. Nick looked up too, and a heavy drop of rain splashed upon his mouth. He licked his lips, then quickly spat, as a strange, numbing sensation spread down his throat. "This should not be," Hedge whispered to himself, as the rain came heavier and a wind sprang up around them. "Summoned rain coming from the northeast. I'd best investigate, master." Nick shrugged, uncertain what Hedge was talking about. The rain made him feel peculiar, recalling him to some other sense of himself. Everything around him had assumed a dreamlike quality, and for the first time he wondered what on earth he was doing. Then a strange pain struck him in the chest, and he doubled over. Hedge caught him and laid him down onto the earth that was rapidly turning into mud. "What is it, master?" asked Hedge, but his tone was inquisitive rather than sympathetic. Nick groaned and clutched at his chest, his legs writhing. He tried to speak, but only spittle came from his lips. His eyes flickered wildly from side to side, then rolled back. Hedge knelt by him, waiting. Rain continued to fall on Nick's face, but now it sizzled as it hit, steam wafting off his skin. A few moments later, thick white smoke began to coil out of the young man's nose and mouth, hissing as it met the rain. "What is it, master?" repeated Hedge, his voice suddenly nervous. Nick's mouth opened, and more smoke puffed out. Then his hand moved quicker than Hedge could see, fingers clutching at the necromancer's leg with terrible force. Hedge clenched his teeth, fighting back the pain, and asked again, "Master?" "Fool!" said the thing that used Nick as its voice. "Now is not the time to seek our enemies. They will find this pit soon enough, but by then we will be gone. You must procure an additional barge at once and load the Hemispheres, and get this body out of the rain, for it is already too fragile, and much remains to be done. Too much for my servants' delays and chatter." The last words were said with venom, and Hedge screamed as the fingers on his leg dug in like a steel-toothed man-trap. Then he was released, to fall back into the mud. "Hurry," whispered the voice. "Be swift, Hedge, be swift." Hedge bowed where he was, not trusting himself to speak. He wanted to edge out of reach of the grasping, inhuman power of those hands, but he feared to move. The rain grew heavier, and the white smoke began to sink back into Nick's nose and mouth. After a few seconds, it disappeared completely, and he went totally limp. Hedge caught his head just before it splashed back into a puddle. Then he lifted him up and carefully arranged him over his shoulders in a fireman's lift. A normal man's leg would have been broken by the force exerted through Nick's hand, but Hedge was no normal man. He lifted Nick easily, merely grimacing at the pain in his leg. He carried Nick halfway back to his tent before the inert body on his shoulders twitched, and the young man began to cough. "Easy, master," said Hedge, increasing his pace. "I'll soon have you out of the rain." "What happened?" asked Nick, his voice rasping. His throat felt as if he'd just smoked half a dozen cigars and drunk a bottle of brandy. "You fainted," replied Hedge, pushing through the flaps of the tent door. "Are you able to dry yourself and get to bed?" Yes, of course," snapped Nick, but his legs trembled as Hedge put him down, and he had to balance himself against a traveling chest. Overhead, the rain beat out a steady rhythm on the canvas, accentuated every few minutes by the dull bass boom of thunder. "Good," replied Hedge, handing him a towel. "I must go and give the night crew their instructions. Then I have to go and acquire another barge. It would probably be best if you rested here, sir. I will make sure someone, not one of the afflicted, brings your meals and empties the necessaries and so forth." "I'm quite able to look after myself," replied Nick, though he couldn't stop shivering as he stripped off his shirt and began to weakly towel his chest and arms, "including overseeing the night crew." "That will not be required," said Hedge. He leaned over Nick, and his eyes appeared to grow larger and fill with a flickering red light, as if they were windows to a great furnace somehow burning inside his skull. "It would be best if you rested here," he repeated, his breath hot and metallic on Nick's face. "You do not need to supervise this work." "Yes," agreed Nick dully, the towel frozen in mid-motion. "It would be best for me to rest. Here." "You will await my return," commanded Hedge. His usual subordinate tone was completely gone, and he loomed over Nick like a headmaster about to cane a pupil. "I will await your return," Nick repeated. "Good," said Hedge. He smiled and turned on his heel, striding back out into the rain. It evaporated instantly into steam as it touched his bare head, wreathing him with a strange white halo. A few steps later, the steam wafted away, and the rain simply plastered down his hair. Back in his tent, Nick suddenly started drying himself again. That done, he put on a pair of badly repaired pajamas and went to his bed of piled furs. His camp bed from Ancelstier had broken days before, the springs collapsing into rust and the canvas crumbling with mildew. Sleep came quickly, but not rest. He dreamed of the 2 silver hemispheres and his lightning farm that was being set up across the wall. He saw the hemispheres absorbing power from 1,000 lightning strikes and, as they drew power, overcoming the force that kept them apart. He saw them finally hurtle together, charged with the strength of 10,000 storms. But then the dream began again, from the beginning, so he couldn't see what happened when the hemispheres met. Outside, the rain came down in sheets, and the lightning struck again and again into and around the pit. Thunder rumbled and shook as the dead hands of the night crew strained at the ropes, slowly dragging the first silver hemisphere towards the red lake and the second hemisphere up and out of the pit. And that is the end of chapter 6. So, I told you it was just a quickie. But, oh, I can't stand Hedge. He's just doing his job. But, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that reading. I need to drink something else. I wonder if when I tried to do the bad guy voice, I overdid it, and that's what made my throat go wild. Anyways, I'll post chapter 7 tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't remember what all I said in yesterday's video, but I did end up making that recording. It was about 44 minutes long. Well, it is 44 minutes long. I remember the numbers. Ended up being 444. 4440. Yeah. I didn't have the courage to post it yet, but I'm planning on doing it sometime this week. I'm resisting the urge to edit it and take all the pauses and ums out, and it's not at all how I wanted originally to tell the world about my mental health struggles. But I guess what better way to do something like that than to just be real about it. It doesn't have to be a big art piece. It doesn't have to be, fabulous transitions and cutaways and music and this and that. Just, if you want to hear a little bit more about me, minus crying, I didn't cry. I hope you will watch that video. But I'll post it sometime this week. But it's long, and I don't know. I think a lot of people won't have the capacity or the patience to listen to the whole thing, but I hope you do. Anyways, let me know what you thought about this reading today. If you enjoyed it, I would love if you would like this video, comment if you want to, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. So, I'll leave it at that, and I will see you tomorrow evening. Take care, and as always, may your magic manifest. Bye.